This is an audio recording of the Barroom Collection by David Duhaime, narrated by the author. Story number 3, The Face on the Page. I was working the day shift. I opened the bar at 1 o'clock. It was a Sunday afternoon. I was pulling a double and would be open until 4 a.m., at which time I would probably collapse on the pool table and sleep for a couple of hours. Before I opened the gate, I went across the street to the supermarket and brought some hot dogs and hamburgers with rolls. We had peppers and onions in the kitchen. Sunday was barbecue day. Simeon would come by in a little while with a pork roast stuffed with garlic and ginger. Then the fun would begin. I had the grill fired up and all the fixings laid out when a man entered the bar. I say entered, but this fellow was shaped like a bell, and he was so large around the middle he could not pass through a 36-inch door face on. He had to squeeze sideways through the opening. I thought instantly back to the first time I ever encountered this fellow. It was about 4 years ago. The situation was pretty much the same, 1:30 on a Sunday afternoon. There were a few patrons in the bar. I was pontificating on one subject or another when this tremendously fat fellow oozes his way through the front door. It took him a while to do it. He had his partner with him, a man so tall he had to stoop to enter the bar. The door was 6 foot 8 inches tall. I instantly dubbed them Mutt and Jeff, but this wasn't funny. Mutt had a golf club in his hands, and Jeff was carrying a baseball bat. They both had a very determined look on their face. I moved an unopened bottle of Heineken close to hand. The butcher knife was out by the barbecue. A lot of good it would do out there. Jeff walked straight up to me and gave me one of those looks you've heard so much about. You know, the evil eye. I looked him over with a gaze so nonchalant you'd have thought I didn't have a care in the world. He asked me if I knew a fellow known as the chef. Everybody knew who the chef was. There didn't seem to be any way to avoid the question. I said, I know a guy they call the chef. There were several patrons in the bar at the time. They were all listening very carefully, without appearing to do so. I think my French teacher was there. Several students from the Institute were there, and 3 Australians were lurking about, hoping someone would run and get them some drugs. Jeff said, "Is he here now?" Sometimes the truth is the best answer. I said no. Mutt was checking the place over with a look that didn't bode well for the chef. The number 3 iron in his hands never saw a golf course, but may well have seen some action, if you know what I mean. "Do you expect him today?" was the next question. Now here was the tricky part. The chef had always treated me with respect, especially after I helped him move out of his girlfriend's digs on a moment's notice. When you help a man save his stereo equipment from the baseball bat of a woman scorned, you get respect. I said, "He comes in from time to time. There's no schedule." The truth was, he could walk through the door any minute now. I didn't think I needed to mention that part. That's what they call omit. Never say anything that doesn't need to be mentioned. Jeff looked me over, trying to determine if I was telling the truth, and then turned swiftly and began the slow process of squeezing himself out the door. Mutt had his back. As he stood there using the number 3 iron as a cane, it looked so harmless. The bar breathed a collective sigh of relief and got back to the business at hand. I turned to several of the students sitting at the bar and said, That, ladies and gentlemen, is what's known as the real deal. About 5 p.m., the bar was humming along like a well-oiled machine. The telephone rang, and I picked it up. Without prelude, a mature man's voice asked, "Is the chef there?" "No," I replied. "Has he been there?" Again, my reply was, "No." "Who is this?" the fine Italian gentleman demanded. "Uncle David, the bartender," I said with a certain amount of authority. "Okay," he said, and hung up. "Okay," he said. Things were not okay. At 8:15 that evening, the chef waltzes in without a care in the world. I took him off to the side and told him there were 2 very bad people looking for him, and I thought he might be advised to make himself scarce for a while. "Don't worry about me, Uncle David. I can take care of myself." I had my doubts. 2 weeks later, I saw the chef walking with a cane. He appeared to be having trouble with his knees. So now, here it is, 4 years later. It's 1:30 on a Sunday afternoon. Louis Prima and Keely Smith are singing "I Ain't Got Nobody" on the jukebox, and Jeff is squeezing himself through the doorway. This time, he's wearing a pair of handcrafted black Italian shoes with a fair to middling shine, a pair of well-tailored trousers, and a comfortable-looking sports shirt of a pastel color with a monogram on the pocket. A thick bracelet of gold chain completed the ensemble, the very picture of a fine Italian gentleman. He took a seat at the end of the bar by the windows and placed a $20 bill on the bar and ordered up a double of the Belvedere with a draft beer chaser. "Straight up or on the rocks?" I inquired. "Straight up." I took a 6-ounce glass and put something more than 4 ounces in it. After I cleared the line from the foam the night before, I drew a healthy and fresh chaser of the Budweiser. Placing a napkin under the bud, as was my habit, I took the $20 bill and rang up 18. Placing $2 change under his napkin, I said, "That's 18 for the Belvedere. The chaser's on me." His face, that up to now had been rather neutral, relaxed a little bit. I thought I detected a little gleam in his eye. I excused myself and went out back to check on the barbecue. When I came back in, Frank Sinatra was singing "Summer Wind." I offered him a hot dog with all the trimmings. He was so surprised. "How much?" he asked. "On the house." He thought for a moment and then asked, "How can you make any money giving things away?" "Well, there's such a thing as hospitality," I said. "And there's such a thing as a lost leader." "How do you mean?" "It might cost me a little to offer a little hospitality, but I end up with a well-stocked tip cup at the end of the evening." I didn't tell him the 8 hot dogs only cost me $1 on special. He didn't look convinced. "Let me tell you a story," I said. His face showed a modicum of interest, so I told him a story. I said, "This is a story that you've heard before, but there are things they didn't tell you in catechism. It's the story of the loaves and the fishes. Now, the etiquette of the day dictated that you should never, repeat, never, go out into the desert without your supply of food and drink. When the disciples told our Lord the people were hungry, the people had brought their lunch, but now it was dinner time. Not everyone had intended staying at the oasis all day, but hanging out with our Lord and listening to him pontificate on the latest Roman edict and the latest goings-on in Jerusalem, everybody was enjoying themselves and lost track of time. The time to safely head back to the city before dark had passed. Our Lord was himself a disciple of his cousin, John the Baptist. When he got to the part about doing away with the bris as a rite of passage for 13-year-old boys and replacing it with the baptism, Things just got too interesting for words. And now, it was advisable to seek the safety of the oasis for the night. When the disciples told our Lord the people were hungry, he said, "Ask around. Maybe someone had a little they could spare." Now, we all know how that conversation goes. "Excuse me, sir. The people are hungry. Can you spare a little food?" "Get out of my way before I trash you." "My brother, the people are poor. Can you spare a little drink?" "Go away." "My friend, there are those who have not had their dinner. Is there anything you can spare?" "Here's a loaf of bread. Enjoy." I think I was beginning to get his interest. So, our disciples report back to our Lord. "Master, we have only collected a little bit. There's not enough to go around." Here's where our Lord demonstrates a little savvy. He said, "Start passing out what we do have and see how that goes." Now, how does that conversation go? "My friend, we don't have much, but I can offer you a little smoked fish." "My friend, you say you don't have much, and then you offer me this wonderful smoked fish? Where is your cup? This wine is very special. The grapes were trampled by my daughter, a 12-year-old virgin. They say you can taste the difference." I had him there. "Jacob, bring the cheese! This gentleman's offered me a most excellent smoked fish. This cheese comes from my grandmother's farm. She's Big Ruti of Gaza." "My friend, Big Ruti of Gaza is the great-aunt of my wife's brother's sister-in-law. We're almost cousins." "Well, cousin, your cup is empty. Here, let me fill it." That must have been one hell of a party. When it was over, there was 12 baskets of leftovers. I ended my story on that note and went to check on the barbecue. When I come back, Sinatra was singing, "It was a very good year." I noticed the Sunday newspaper on the ice machine. The entire front page was taken up with a photo, and the photo was of the fine Italian gentleman sitting at the end of my bar. I turned the paper face down and casually covered it with a bar rag, but I'm sure he saw me. He ordered another double of the Belvedere with chaser, and I built him the same. Just about that time, Simeon, my French teacher, strode into the bar and presented for my approval a pork roast infused with garlic and ginger, fully cooked. All we had to do was keep it warm on the grill. I gave my hearty approval and poured Simeon a shot of Jack Daniels. "The veggies are ready," I said. Simeon turned to Jeff, sitting at the end of the bar, and said, "Monsieur, can I offer you some roast pork with barbecued vegetables? Shall I make you a plate?" The gentleman glanced at his watch. It was almost 2:00, and he said, "That's very kind of you, but I have a previous appointment." He placed a $10 bill on the bar and made his way toward the door. After he was finished squeezing his way out, I turned the Sunday paper over, and sure enough, there was his photograph. The headline over the face on the page said, "The New Godfather." It turns out his mother still lived here in the old neighborhood. Every Sunday at 2:00, he went to the house he grew up in for dinner. For the next 2 years, every Sunday at 1:30, he would stop by my place and have a double shot of the Belvedere ×2 before going to dinner at 2:00. They prosecuted him under the RICO statutes. He went to jail. I lost my very good customer.